John here. Today you're going to learn the lick you just heard, and I'm going to show you 3 effective ways to practice this one. Number 1 is accents. Simply play through the whole lick and accent each note in the subdivision in turn. And the whole lick is written out in 32nd notes, but for the accents practice, we're going to see it as 16th notes instead. So 16th notes, that's 4 notes per beat, which will give us 4 different accents to work on. So if you do this correctly, you will play the entire lick 4 times in a row without making a mistake. The last part is very important because making mistakes when you practice anything mechanical like this is one of the worst things you can do for your progress. They even did a study on this with high-level piano students. The way they did the study was to have the students learn a fairly involved run, and then they could practice for as long as they wanted to until they felt they had it. So they did this under supervision of the scientists. But once they left, they couldn't touch it until the day after, where they would get tested and see the retention and accuracy and the overall musical performance. The outcome of the study saw that the ones that improved the most weren't the ones who spent the most time practicing or did the most amount of reps. Instead, what they found was that the students who made the least amount of mistakes, they improved the most from that day to the next. This is something I've seen in my own practice as well as in hundreds of students that I've taught throughout the years. So if you want to improve the fastest, avoid making mistakes. So before we apply the practice techniques, let's just look at what we're working with here. So you have the link in the description for the tabs, you can check that out, and you also have tabs on the screen for the fast version. But what you want to do here is that you start on the 5th fret of the G string, and we're just going to play this. And then we repeat that on the B string. And then we move that up a minor third, so wherever your pinky were, that's where your index finger is going to be. Again, and one more time. And then bend. 20 to 22 in A. So this is played over an A drone, and the way that I hear this is sort of like a mix between the Dorian mode and the blues scale, because here you have the minor third. And I say minor third, and you might be like, well, hang on, you have more notes than that. Yes, but this one is going to stick out the most because it's 32nd notes, and this note is going to be on the beat, then this note, then this note, then this note. And this might sound a bit diminished to you right now, but in terms of the relationship to the root note A, we have the minor third starting on here, the flat 5, then we have the 6th, which is a very Dorian note, and then we have the root, and then we bend up to the root note again. So the overall effect to my ears is not a diminished one per se, but more of a mix between the blues scale and the Dorian scale, since we have the natural 6th here. So that's how I interpret it. Doesn't really matter. If you like the sound, you can use it over any type of A minor chord. So give that a try. So we changed the subdivision from 32nd notes to 16th notes. Just makes it easier to put this into practice. You don't have to have the metronome at a very, very low tempo. And actually, initially, I think it's good to not even use a metronome for this one. Just make sure that your foot is on 1 the whole time. And like I said, it's 16th notes now, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first variation then is just accenting the 1. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You don't need to add the bend at the end. I'm not going to do that when I do number 2 here. So number 2, you're going to accent the upstrokes instead. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, the accents are quite subtle. It's more about connecting your ear to that note, because it's so easy to always accent the first note. You kind of lose track of the other notes because they're in a rhythmically weaker position. So even without accenting the downbeats, they're going to stick out more to your ear. And all this technique stuff is connected to how well you hear. So you need to hear your mistakes for you to be able to fix them. So that's why the accenting thing is very important. But don't overdo the accent, because you don't want to go so far that you actually change your technique to get it done. So just slightly hit the note a bit harder, and also press it just a tiny smidge harder with the finger in question, so you can really feel that connection when you do it. Number 2, focusing on the seams. The seams is just my term for the connective shifts of any lick or phrase. A great way to practice this is to use transition time, and if you're not familiar with that, you can check out the video that I'm going to link in the description as well. So I have a full breakdown of that very, very important practice technique. I'm also going to cover it a bit quicker here, but for a full breakdown, check the video out. So the seams, as I call it, in this lick would be this. Right, so it's basically from this note to that note, but I generally like to add some notes before and after, so we get a more logical thing to practice. So in this case, let's just do. And this is great because it's very logical, but also you can get the extra practice of moving backwards as well, which will help your technique a lot. And since this is a very symmetrical pattern, the seams will be in the same place. So we have this, and then, and from here, since we're going here for the bend, you could, if you want, just add this. So just add, makes it more logical to loop. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, shift up with your pinky to 20, and go down 4, 3, 2, 1. And like I said, you want to apply the transition time method here. Very, very important practice method. And I have a link to the full video explaining that and the benefits and how to do it. But basically what you want to do is just play slowly enough so you actually have time to direct your fingers to move as quickly as you possibly can in the transitions, hence the name transition time. You can either choose a specific number of reps that you want to do for each seam. Maybe you go for like 10 or 20 for each seam, or you simply put on a timer for like 5 minutes and then you do 2 to 4 reps for each seam, and then once you reach the top, you go back down again. So you kind of repeat that on a loop until the time is up. So either way works, just depends on what you feel the most comfortable with your schedule. Number 3, the transposition method. This method is quite challenging because you will keep increasing the amount that you shift in each direction. Transposing simply means that you change keys. We start here on the 8th fret now, and the reason is so we don't run out of frets. And you're gonna see why in a second. Basically, this method just means that you play the pattern, and in this lick it's gonna be that one. You play that once in the starting position, and then you move it up a half step, do it again. Then you move back to the starting position. Now you move down a half step. Then you go back to the starting position, then up a whole step, and then starting position, and then down a whole step. So you keep moving 1 fret higher each time until you reach the 14th fret, and then 2nd fret here when we started on the 8th fret on the initial lick. But the thing why we're moving up here to here is because once we reach that note, we've reached the tritone, and the tritone is the halfway point of the octave, and since we build in both directions, we've covered all keys by doing that. So I'm gonna play through that entire thing now, and you can see the tabs on the screen, and you can play along if you want, and then you'll see exactly what the whole deal is. Now, as with the other two, you can find a link in the description below for a full breakdown of this practice method as well. All right, now it's your turn. Try these 3 methods out on this lick, and then when you get comfortable with it, you can apply it to something else that you're already practicing. Now, I mention this often, but for a reason, because the only way these practice methods are going to help if you incorporate them in your day-to-day practice. So before we go, I have an experiment/challenge for you. So it would be really cool if you try this out and let me know in the comments how it went. Next time you sit down to practice, mark on a piece of paper, your phone or a computer, every time you make a mistake during that practice session. And a mistake in this case is just anything that was unintended. Because it's very easy to let these mistakes just slip by and you don't even realize that you made them. So this can be a real eye-opening experience to just do this for one practice session. But be really, really honest with yourself. If it was a mistake, you need to mark it down. And then you can check at the end of the session if you made more mistakes than you thought or if you're all right. Chances are it's going to be way more than you think, and that's why this is so important, because it will really up your concentration when you have this marking system down. So after your next practice session, if you've done this, just let me know in the comments if you felt that you made more mistakes than you thought or you made less mistakes. And it's just a great tool to see how it relates to your progress or lack of progress, because if you make a lot of mistakes, that's gonna explain why you're not progressing as much as you should.